Jordan had a saying, he told me. He said something once. He said, everything I am, I owe to the University of Georgia. And if you can ever reach a point in your life where you can look back and say some of those same things, then you're doing okay.
Hello, Dawg Nation, and welcome back to the DawgNation Tell All. I'm Kaylee Mansell, and this is the series that takes a deep dive into the stories and lives of your DawgNation favorites. And today is who I would say is the fan favorite. It's your favorite sports writer's favorite sports writer, none other than Mr. Jeff Sentell.
Kaylee, how are you?
I'm just so happy to be here with you.
I think I christened it before the show. This is going to be Mansell's Details, right? You want to know everything? I can't wait to hear what you got.
It's funny because I feel like you and I do a tell-all every Wednesday before the hedges when we just chat it up. So it just feels like something that we do each week, just this time it's on camera.
It is, and we've got a lot to talk about. Yeah. And I just have to follow in Brandon Adams' shoes right now. It's kind of like, that guy's the leadoff hitter, and I got to be the man in the two-hole to move the bases here.
So in your Before the Hedges conversations that you do, one question that's always stuck out to me is you always ask guys, why? What is your why? But I want to know, what's Jeff Sentell's why?
That's a good question. I guess it just kind of evolves around, when you're growing up. I grew up in really small North Georgia. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have a job that I loved and a job that would be different every day. And like for me, there's a lot of people that do what I do. Like the Georgia beat is a very competitive beat, especially on the recruiting side. So I always try to find a way to say, did I just tell a recruiting story, or did I tell a story about, the latest guy I wrote about, Tyler J. Williams? Is it a Tyler J. Williams story first, or is it a story of a guy that's going to play for Georgia? I mean, goodness, Kirby Smart has given me so many players to write about that are great, that are 5 stars, that are the next best thing, where I think our readers get a little bored if they go another first-round draft pick, another 5-star, another guy that'll probably start in 2 years. And for me, I know when I hit the keys on the keyboard, if I've written that story before, if I've told that story before, that is a hard stop for me in terms of I need to do more reporting, or I need to tell, kind of going back to, I need to tell a genuine player X story that people will, when his name, this is one of my humblest things I ever hear from people, is our readers when we're out at events or DawgNation events or on cruises or at games, they'll say, hey, when so-and-so went in the game, great example, Jalen Walker, when so-and-so went in the game, I told my wife, I said, he's the one that worked at Chick-fil-A when he was in high school. He's the one that wanted to be an orthodontist. He's the one that wanted to knock teeth out and then straighten them later on. And when I can humanize those players, that's what I feel like my why is here for DawgNation.
What's it like having these conversations with them and taking that to paper and making it different in such a competitive market? Yeah,
it's almost like I try to think like short attention span theater a lot, but then I also try to think, well, I've got them on the page. How can I keep them there? One of the things people tell me is I don't like to read really long stories whatsoever, but somehow I find myself reading you. And, that tells me like I've kind of done my job. Kind of the way I was trained as a journalist is, pretend like people have got only 5 minutes. So you want your best stuff at the top. But what I've kind of evolved into doing is I want to try to have, I call it breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel. Leave breadcrumbs all around the story, like gold coins around the story that will make them want to keep going. They're like, hold on, I got to finish this. So that's one of the things that I try to do. And, it involves a more detailed story. I know when I'm on my right path, when I talk to a recruit and they're like, what? They say, you really want to know that? Nobody's asked me that before. And in journalism, in news gathering, in media, in storytelling, when someone usually says that, no one's never asked me that before, what usually comes out of that is just pure gold.
You're a tremendous storyteller. I mean, I could sit here and listen to you talk, and you can be humble about it and say no, but you just have this presentation flair, and just the way you tell stories is so captivating to me. And you talk about growing up in North Georgia. We've got that North Georgia pride, and I really want to get to your story and the backstory. So when was that first moment that you remember you were in love with UGA football, or the culture around it? What was that moment for you?
Well, there's a couple. for me, you grew up in Georgia in the early 80s, mid to late 80s, and you're surrounded by dog people. My first grade teacher was a lady named Miss Myra Thomas, and she was a dog fan, and apparently she had connections at, down Selig Circle and in Buttsmere before it was Buttsmere. But we did this thing, it was the first grade, where they put a bunch of triangles on our desk. And it was like a group thing, I remember, and they said, make a picture out of it. And I found the red triangles and the white triangles, and they were like, just really like, looking back at it now, somebody like took a piece of construction paper and just cut it all, like Edward Scissorhands with it really quickly to cut it up. And from that, I put together 3 Georgia Bulldogs in pads. One of them was Lindsey Scott, one of them was Buck Bellew, one of them was Herschel Walker. And we've told this story a little bit on Hedges, but I know not everybody saw it. But if you see before the Hedges, I put like that poster frame. I got to get a new frame for it now, but like it's what I did as first grade Jeffrey. And I kind of have that in the corner of the desk just as an homage or as a thank you to somebody that really did a cool thing for me growing up. But so I did it, and it was Herschel, and it was Lindsey, and it was Buck Bellew. And then my first grade teacher, unbeknownst to me at all, she sent it off to Athens and got it autographed by Buck, autographed by Herschel, and autographed by Lindsey Scott. And I'll never forget too, because she's like, she was trying to be just a great first grade teacher. So she said one time, Jeffrey Sentell, I need to see you outside. And everybody in the room was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Wait till his mama finds out. And she's like, listen, and she had a little manila envelope, she pulled it out and she says, listen, I want you to have this.
We have that picture here. Break this down because first off, hang it in the Louvre. It's a masterpiece for a first grader. If you want to hold it, you can.
Sure. So this is the one thing my mom would always say is we have to work on your whys.
It's a little crooked.
But it was and then I remember grade school teachers were like, okay, you need to sign your name normal because you're not famous or anything. So I had to kind of keep it between the lines a little bit. But you see it, you have a 24, you have a 34, you have an 8. You see how I did those with little pieces of construction paper? And I gotta give, that's probably Elmer's glue. Shout out to Elmer's because that glue is still gluing many, many moons later.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and it's been through some moves and everything, but that's Herschel, that's Buck, and that's Lindsey from a long time ago. And I look at this and I don't think autographs. I just think of my first grade teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think about growing up in Georgia, I think everybody's got a Georgia person like that in their lives that, just kind of lets them know that the red and black is a little bit okay. Now, the other thing that I kind of would say goes hand in hand with that is I got to thank my grandfather, Hurtis. My grandfather, he ran a sawmill. And he was a deacon in our church. He was a song director in our church. And there was a time where I wondered this was North Georgia. And I wondered how well could my grandfather read? Because every time he'd come home from the sawmill, I'd see his blue Chevy Silverado truck coming in the driveway. And he'd bring me a copy of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And that was the sports section. And we'd get on his swing, we'd be on the front porch, and he'd put the sports section in my lap, and he'd say, tell me what happened. And it would be Steve Barkowski, William Andrews, it would be Dominic Wilkins, it would be the Bulldogs of the 80s, like Tim Worley, Keith Henderson, guys like that. And I would read about them. And it just kind of, I don't know whether it crystallized or the lightning bolt hit me. It was how cool would it be to be the person that puts these words on the page and then gets to see it and tell everybody else about it. Not just your grandfather, but everybody about it.
You had this dream of being a sports writer or potentially working for the AJC, but I really do feel like that's such a young age to know what you want, because I feel like if you're 9 years old, you want to be Superman or Batman. So for you to have that realistic expectation and to see where you are now, that's so fascinating to me. And I can't help but think about your grandfather and your first grade teacher, if they realized in that moment that you were going to do exactly what you said you were going to.
Well, it was funny. I went full circle with it. So when I applied for this job at DawgNation, this was probably early 2015.
Because you were one of the first ones.
Yeah, and it was me and Seth Emerson were the first hires for the new DawgNation project. Chip Towers was here, Michael Carvel was here. But I found myself, oh my gosh, it's kind of one of those, you're applying for a job within the Atlanta Journal-Constitution company. And I was like, and this probably doesn't happen anymore, but in a writer's world, you're writing for writers. So for me, my cover letter told that story. Like, it was like, this is why I'm applying. You could have asked 10-year-old Jeff and he would have thought the AJC was the coolest thing. And not only that, but it was the one that propelled me in school, prepared me to get good grades, go to Georgia, get the training necessary to do what I wanted to do. So that's one of those full circle moments in life.
I would be doing a total disservice to DawgNation if we didn't talk about your college days at the University of Georgia. First off, I feel like you probably look the same as you did in college, but just when you think about that time, how was the culture around the UGA football program different then?
So I was very fortunate. I was an ambitious kid. And one of the things about the dream is if you ask probably 19-year-old Jeff what the dream was, he probably would have said, well, let me think about ESPN. But it's very, very hard. But I knew it was hard. So I did the campus magazine. I interned with Ray Goff's show. And through that connection, I got to know Lauren, the great Lauren Smith. And I interned with him for 2 seasons. And, that was one of those things where Lauren was a great mentor for me because, I didn't always do everything the right way. I messed up. And, one of those things, and that was probably one of the most important mentors in my life because there was a point with working with Lauren where I was like, okay, now I was a senior and I was thinking about, okay, where's my first job? And, demo tapes and getting my on-air reel together. But there's so many things I got to write for the Georgia Game Day program. I remember traveling with Lauren and Tubby Smith to Georgia Bulldog clubs. I was the student intern. And from there, I got a chance to intern with Larry Munson. And wow. You had Lauren, you had Larry, you had the Grady School and that challenging curriculum, and you try to fit all that together. And it was a great, this is the one story that, it's funny. I tell my colleague, Mike Griffith, all the time. I said, Mike, you'll never get the Georgia-Florida game and what it means to the Georgia people. And I'm like, every Georgia graduate, everybody that went through Athens has a Georgia-Florida story. And for mine, I'm not trying to, win over the female audience.
Tell it. They need to know.
But we're Georgia people. Everybody knows this. For a 12-year span, Georgia won 1 game in Jacksonville. That was 1997. Georgia was favored to lose by 20. It was Spurrier at the zenith of his powers. One of my best friends in life, who I grew up with, went to Georgia and then went into nursing school because he was one of those guys that's like, by golly, I'm going to have a job when I graduate. So he wanted to be a nurse. The Medical College of Georgia had a satellite campus in Athens. I think there were 33 girls or 32 girls, and there were 3 guys.
Bad ratio.
Yeah, bad ratio. But one of those males was my best friend, and because of that, he knew all the girls in the nursing school, and he was probably felt like Maverick in Top Gun because there were a lot of single, really nice-looking, smart, attractive nurses in nursing school. But because I knew my friend, we were out at the landing after Georgia beats Florida 37-17. Shout out Robert Edwards for 4 touchdowns. My future wife, I'm kind of burying the nugget here, but my future wife was one of my friend Haddon's colleagues in school, classmates in school. And so my friend group and her friend group kind of saw each other at the landing, and we started talking.
Was it love at first sight?
Oh, the birds were probably chirping. Everybody was deliriously happy because the Dogs had a unicorn of a win in Jacksonville. And if she wouldn't have went out if the Dogs lost, again, this is once in a 12-year period that the Georgia Bulldogs actually won in Jacksonville. But I tell that story, and other people have a similar Georgia-Florida story. Now, is it meeting the love of your life and how chance that encounter was? Probably not. But it may be a story that they'll look back on and say, I made some bad decisions in Jacksonville that weekend. Or it may be a story where they look back on and said that was the best of times, watching Lindsey run or watching Keith Henderson run or watching Malcolm Mitchell run, like all these great plays over and over, Nolan Smith's games. But like that to me is why that game I think should always be played in Jacksonville, and it should always be special because, the overwhelming happiness of my life comes from Georgia beating Florida. And like Lauren had a saying, he told me, he said something once, he said, everything I am, I owe to the University of Georgia. And if you can ever reach a point in your life where you can look back and say some of those same things, then you're doing okay.
It's like, what are the odds that you not only got to spend time with Lauren Smith, but also Larry Munson too, two of the all-time Georgia icons? I mean, what do you remember most about working with Larry Munson?
So Larry would do, the way Larry is on the air is the way Larry, bless his soul, lived his life. Like you could be talking about going to the commissary and getting your favorite coffee or getting your favorite pasta bowl on pasta day. And Larry would be like, that was a quagmire I had to get through there. We had a little spaghetti junction. We had to come around. I had to zig. I had to zag. I kind of felt like Buzzy Rosenberg. I tried to get around there. Like he would articulate everything in his life.
No off switch.
No off switch. That would be genuine Larry. And he would be a guy that would just be, he was interested in movies. He was interested in a lot of things. Absolutely loved to fish. And I had the chance to learn a lot about football and life from Larry for like, I'll never forget. I was like driving every day or 3 days a week for their afternoon show. I believe it was on 680 The Fan. And like, it was Jeff Van Note, an Atlanta Falcons icon, and then Larry Munson. And you just sit there and you're going, what am I doing? What am I doing? Because that was the same Jeff that was like in his parents' kitchen listening to a boombox, not to listen to the latest MTV hit, but I'm listening to Larry Munson on a Saturday night. My feet are propped up, listening to, somehow Georgia with Wayne Johnson beating Auburn in the fire hose game or something like that. And I mean, he was the storyteller for DawgNation for years and years and years. And, to have that small chunk of my life where I intersected with him, I mean, it was just really, really cool. And that's something I'll always remember.
So you go to Georgia, you get to have all these experiences and opportunities in journalism, but what was it like navigating post-college? Like, was it as easier than you thought it would be, or what did that look like for you? It
was tough. I mean, it kind of showed me like what the journalism world is talking about. Because like I said, I wanted to be an ESPN anchor. Like I was on air at a small station out of Toccoa through an internship. When I was in college, and I had clips and I had a reel, and it was really hard to find that really first job, and it was really hard for me to. I was at a point where I'll never forget this. Somebody in Huntsville, bless their soul, when you're in the business, and a lot of people watching this, but like I had 50, 60 demo tapes sent out that you're sending out wherever there's a job opening at, right? Mm-hmm. And like somebody called me, and it was like, I think it was the news director of the station in Huntsville, and they said, listen, you're in our final 3. I'm going to tell you, you're not going to make it because there's no sound on your videotape. so you're not getting this, but take solace in the fact that you made the final 3, but we can't hear you. So like, wow. They're like, I'm guessing you had somebody put all these together for you? And I said, yes. So I needed to find a new person, a new company to put together my demo tapes, because I obviously didn't go through all of them and play all of them to make sure that it would work. But that's like one of those little things. And like at that point where, it was hard, like most of my opportunities, like, do you want to be in news? And I did not want to be in news. Mm-hmm. Or, you had to start out as a one-man band videographer, and you can get on the air that way. And like, there was like a crossroads in my life where I was like working odd jobs, waiting on the journalism job, where I just decided, I kind of want to live where I want to live. And like I had a lucky thing where I could fall back on my writing clips at Georgia. And I said, let me just try being a sports writer again. So I started stringing for the Savannah Morning News, covering football in Savannah. And then from there, I got a job in Northern Virginia. From Northern Virginia, I get to Augusta. From Augusta to Birmingham. It's very much just like the Atlanta Braves. That's what I had to explain to my mom. Like, Mom, when you're watching Channel 17 all these years, the Superstation, and they say this guy had to go to Macon, and then he had to go to AA, and then he had to go to AAA Richmond, that's kind of what I'm doing. And I went from Augusta to Birmingham and finally to Atlanta. And like, it's just one of those things where you find yourself going like, you know, it'll all pay off, keep working. And it obviously did.
I want to focus on your time in Birmingham. You were a high school editor, and then you were also there when the rise of Nick Saban was going on, and you got into DawgNation right before Kirby came. So you saw the rise of Nick Saban, you saw the rise of Kirby Smart. How are their stories similar, and how are they different? Because you've seen a firsthand account of both.
It's very similar, especially since I got a chance to be on the recruiting side and like learn how both of them were being built. And like, it's pretty funny. Most DawgNation people will know this, but Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe in his first year at Alabama. Kirby Smart lost to both Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech in his first year at Georgia.
It's hard to believe now.
Yeah, very hard to believe. That's like really the last time Georgia lost home games was 2016. But like, Alabama is just a unique place. Like, my son Kyle was born there, but like, the example here is crazy. Like, you'd move into a neighborhood, you'd start hanging out with your friends or your kids' friends' parents, because they would be like soccer games or mutual things. And they would be like, all right, you're from Georgia, you're a graduate. She grew up in Georgia, she went to Georgia. You're dog people, we get it. But like, who do you like better between Alabama and Auburn? I mean, it's like, it's really, like, who would you choose if you had to be one or the other? Like, they want to know. Like, it's like people with
You got to pick a side.
It's like politics right now with people, and I would be like, well, I don't really, I've never really thought about that. That's like, do I want a vacation on the moon, or do I want a vacation on Venus? I really never thought about that right now, because it's not really a possibility for me. And then they would be like, and then they'd come back and they'd say, well, which one do you hate more? And I was like, oh my gosh.
So Birmingham was the last place you were before you came here and were a part of DawgNation, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, so you get here, you're working for the AJC, and like, this has been your dream. Like, what was that first day like? Did you just feel accomplished?
I just wanted to earn it. That's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to earn it. And, you know, luckily I had, and it's so true, like, our good friend Michael Carvel, one of the guys that was instrumental in like the hiring process for building DawgNation and building up at the time SEC Country and everything else like that. Michael had been the recruiting writer at the AJC for maybe 10 years now, very successful at it, big audience. But as it turns out, Michael was the sports director at that small station in Toccoa, Georgia, WNEG TV, when I was interning with him in college. So he knew my work ethic, he knew what I was about, he knew, you know, what I could do, how I could tell a story, you know, how hard, he would always say like passionate, energy, hardworking. And, you know, those things, what was that, from 1997 to 2015, they kind of preserved over the years. So when he had an opening, they had an opening, he knew that I'd been in Augusta, he knew that I'd been in Birmingham, and he knew that I would be a candidate because of our past association. So that's when I talked to any sort of journalism folks or media folks about this industry. I was like, watch it. Be very careful, because the people that you make connections with in job 1 and job 2 will probably yield job 4, job 5. Just the way the world works, the media world works. Like, a lot of these media jobs are already filled before they're posted. That's just the way journalism and, you know, like a lot of the media industry works.
So, all right, this is the part I've been really excited to get to. You are our DawgNation recruiting insider. Recruiting is, I mean, it's a machine in itself. Why recruiting? What is it about it that makes you passionate about this one particular area of the sport?
I don't like getting to write a story where everybody has the same level of access to. You know, it's kind of like everybody's getting the same groceries and, you know, go cook up a better meal with the same groceries. Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of people, a lot of great beat writers that do that, even on the Georgia beat. But like for me, I always like to have a chance to go up to a practice field and talk to somebody for 10 minutes and have it be a great 10 minutes and not have to share it amidst the scrum, so to speak. And, you know, the one thing about Georgia recruiting that's different is I remember when I started and Georgia would be in a fight with like Florida State, Tennessee, and Auburn. And you'd be like, I don't think Georgia can win this one. Or throw in Clemson there too. You'd be like, I don't know if Georgia's going to win this one. And now They went all of them. Like for Georgia's peers now in recruiting are probably Ohio State, Alabama. I mean, USC tries to think it is, but it's not. And that's it. Like the biggest thing now is like, I've seen so many 5-stars that it was like, when you see Georgia, like good example is Tech. Like I can't remember, I think it's 2008, the last time Georgia Tech beat a player that Georgia and Georgia Tech both wanted. And like, you don't even see Georgia and Georgia Tech in the same finalist group. For Georgia and Kirby Smart, they just do it better, harder, more determined, more professionally, more like, it took me a while for people to realize that I don't think people recruit the way Georgia does. And it's not only like the clever thing, but it's like the frequency of quality communication, not just quantity of communication, that Georgia has really excelled at. Like I've seen, Kirby is a master recruiter, but what he's done is he's found a way to find other, I call them a lot, black belt recruiters, because think how great Sam Pittman was. Think how great Del McGee was. Think how great Glenn Schumann is. Think how great for a little bit of time Fran Brown was. Dan Lanning was a great recruiter. Trey Scott's a great recruiter. Stacey Searles is a great recruiter now. Like the one constant you find is Kirby surrounds himself with like-minded guys that realize that these players are the life's blood of the program, and the program has never been better.
And recruiting is obviously not what it once was. I mean, there is an elephant in the room, the 3-letter word that nobody wants to talk about, and that's NIL. How has NIL changed your job?
It's a big difference. Like I have to ask questions about people now, like how much does NIL matter? And it's almost like you feel like you don't want to go into their pocketbook a little bit, but like you just want to know, is that really a big factor?
How high on the priority list?
Yeah, or it's like, some people probably don't want to get into that, but other people are like, listen, it's a factor. And one of the things Georgia's had to do is I think Georgia's benefited from a Kirby discount or a kind of program status discount a little bit with NIL, because a lot of those schools have to pay those heavy NIL figures in order to get a player like that to come to them on their roster. Whereas Georgia, this is a big thing, like football players get better by competing every day against really good football players. And Georgia has so many that a lot of times the people not only realize they'll win, they realize the stage, they realize the passion of DawgNation, but it's also about, there's going to be 4 or 5 guys just like me that want to go to the NFL, and there's going to be 4 or 5 guys just like me that, like if I'm a receiver, they're going to play DB. If I'm a defensive lineman, they're going to be the offensive line. So how am I going to get better? I'm going to get my stuff knocked into the dirt for about 2 years until I'm the bigger, faster, stronger man, and then I'll be ready for the games, and then I'll be ready for the NFL. And it's the accumulation of resources. Everybody calls it stacking it up like corded wood, like cord wood, but that's really what Georgia does. I mean, you just look at the roster right now, and the fact that Dylan Fairchild and Micah Morris and Jared Wilson are finally going to get a lot of snaps now when they've been there since 2021, when they could have been starting at the South Carolinas or the Floridas of the world or the Auburns of the world for the last 2 years, shows you how high and mighty Georgia's talent base is right now.
On the outside looking in, I feel like it's easy for people to say, well, NIL is ruining recruiting. NIL is ruining college football. So like moving forward, should DawgNation still care about recruiting?
I hope so, but I think they should, because sooner or later, I think they'll get NIL in check a little bit, where it's not
still early days.
It's not an inducement so much, or is it just plain and simple a baited hook? But the other thing about it is you got to make sure you get the right players too. Like I can say that the quarterback at Atlanta High School is worth $1.5 million a year, and you can pay him $1.5 million in a year through your collective and get him, but you better be right about the fact he can play. Or that he can handle $1.5 million. Like one of the things that I do with my reporting now, and it probably goes unseen, maybe I share a little bit of nuggets on Before the Hedges, but I sit there and I talk to people close to them. When I'm in a school, I'll ask a janitor, I'll ask a cafeteria worker, before I write this really rosy portrait of a player, and people think, man, how does Georgia get all those guys? And you find all these guys. Well, I actually try to be a journalist and vet them. Like if somebody tells me in the guidance office, or like an assistant coach or a player, or somebody that works in the cafeteria, he's okay. maybe I don't go as heavy-handed in with like, this is a great profile of this young man. But when I get all those green lights and like they say something like, child, let me tell you a story about Malachi, you know, or whatever. That's when you know that you're still not only putting up a product that DawgNation will devour, but it's got some reality to it as well. And I think, yeah, NIL will be here. You got to make sure you get the right players. But also there's a fact that I think more and more players realize that, and maybe this is the message that Kirby Smart has expertly handed out to all these players, but they really want $25 million in 3 years. They don't want $1 million right now. They want $25 million to be a first-round draft pick. That's the one thing that's different now is, you know, Georgia's main lure to players now is it's not winning natties and it's not, you know, building something. It is the very likelihood in terms of an investment that the place that will most likely get them to shaking Roger Goodell's hand as a first-round draft pick, there's no place quite like Georgia right now.
So, Jeff, now that you've told all, why do you get that look on your face?
I can't wait to see what you got up your sleeve.
Now I'm going to have you do something where you're just going to tell me a little, and hopefully we'll maybe have some recruiting tea.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go ahead and start off with the easy ones. What's the greatest UGA Sports moment you've witnessed with your own eyes?
Kirby Smart hugging Vince Dooley after the 2021 national title. I'm a grown man. I got kids. That would have been the moment. Like if you want to play the video right now of Vincent and Kirby hugging. For me, that was just full circle, past, present, future, glory to new glory.
Who's the greatest athlete of all time? Doesn't have to be a Georgia player. Greatest athlete.
I want to say Jim Thorpe, but I kind of think, I'm not going to say Bo Jackson. I'm an Olympics guy. I'm an Olympics guy, so I'll say Carl Lewis. Like what Carl Lewis has done over the years, long jump, 100, 200, 4x100 relay, and he did it like for 20 years, 16 years of Olympics. I've always thought Carl Lewis was probably the best athlete
I
ever.
knew that you were going to give me an A++ answer on that. All right, here we go. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. You ready?
Uh-huh.
Who is a recruit that you were absolutely shocked UGA did not get?
There's a lot of those. Well, not many past 2018, 2019, 2020. You know why it happened with a lot of them. You know, there may be a family feel. You may be like a rare official visit that went bad, or there may be something as simple as the girlfriend went to that school.
Whose official visit went bad?
Oh, can't tell that one. I'm saving that one for the book.
The Tell All book?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, really the most honest answer that shows the strength of Georgia's recruiting right now is that they're getting most of the ones they really want, they really prioritize. Like, there's usually a reason why they didn't get them.
All right, well, let me ask this sort of differently then. Okay, if you could go back from the past and flip one recruit and he would go to UGA, who would you have flipped?
That's a good question. Well, I'm sure Brandon would love for me to say a receiver or a quarterback.
Your personal choice. Who would you have liked to see in a Dawg uniform?
Well, I would like to have seen Cal Hamilton. He was really good. The Maris safety that went on to Notre Dame, that's probably a guy that, I mean, Georgia's had so many great safeties, but that's a guy that I think could have elevated things a little bit with Georgia.
You've been to a lot of these. I imagine it's going to be pretty tough. What's your favorite commitment ceremony you've attended? I feel like circa 2016 through 2018, there were some really unique out there.
I've got to say, this one's just different. So, I don't know if the good people at Harrison High School knew what they were doing with Justin Fields, but somehow they had his decision and they had the media sequestered away to where Justin decided in front of the school, in front of the stadium, but the media wasn't allowed in. And it's funny, one of the reporters on the Georgia beat tried to tunnel rat his way through like an opening, like he went through like a grassy field and was trying to look in through, one corner of, he was doing his job as a reporter. He was trying to get there, but like,
hey, shooters are going to shoot.
Yeah, but like, Justin's one, that one's always, kind of unique how I was there, but I kind of wasn't there. And then we could talk to Justin in a hallway with a group press conference afterward. That one was kind of different because that one was the one where it really felt like Georgia and Kirby was just going to climb every mountain. You know, they had Jake Fromm playing well. They still had Jacob Eason, who was hurt. And then Justin Fields was on the way too. And all of a sudden it was like all three of those guys was going to be crazy. You know, that's one of those that always just seems like I've seen several live animals now. I've seen a lot of them live. I've seen the ones at the All-American games. Like that one is kind of the recruiting ceremony that I attended but didn't really attend. It kind of is a good metaphor for Justin's Georgia career. We were there with Justin Fields, but we really weren't. And before we knew it, it was not really the experience we thought it would be.
You've been to high schools all over the state. What's the best high school football environment?
Granite Bowl, Elbert County.
Of course. What would be your walk-up song?
My walk-up song. I gotta say right now, $1 Million Baby. I gotta go Tommy Richmond right now.
Our pop culture king. One movie you think everyone should watch?
Ooh, that's a great one. Shawshank Redemption. That's one of those you gotta watch all the time. Honorable mention, Saving Private Ryan, because that one makes me cry.
All right, you host a Wednesday night show, Before the Hedges. Who would be your dream Before the Hedges guest?
Dream Before the Hedges guest. Kirby Smart.
Oh, that's a good answer. I'd love to have him on the show. All right, since this is our tell all, you've told us all, you've told us a little, but I want to use this opportunity to let you tell us what you've got going on in your life. If you want to make a shout out or just give some words of wisdom to Dawg Nation, the floor is yours, Jeff Sentell.
I would just say very, very grateful. Like, yeah, we work hard. We work a lot of time, a lot of work to get here, but we try to feed like an insatiable audience. But like, there's not a day that goes by that I don't sit there and go like, man, I'm so blessed and doggone lucky to do what I do. Especially that, you know, I'm the son of a guy that drove a truck and was a bank teller. And I'm here in Atlanta covering this fantastic football team. And for me, it's just like every day, it's like, how did I get here? And, you know, I got to thank the man upstairs. I got to thank so many people that kind of poured into me. And for me, that's why I want to hit those keys every day. It really just, it's really a great thing to do what we do for a living.
Dang it, Jeff, you're the only person that can do this to me, like actual tears. And before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for being a part of this and having this conversation with you. We've been good friends for years now, and to be able to work with you, I mean, just what you said just really hit home. I just feel really grateful to be sitting here with you and getting the chance to hear your story and getting to work with you every day. It's just, the feeling is grateful.
Kaylee, you have made us better. I hope you know this. And we can't wait. As long as we can hold on to you, we can't wait to still call you a teammate.
All right, we're going to wrap up before the tears really start rolling. Dawg Nation, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Tell All. If you haven't checked out Brandon Adams yet, make sure to do that. Give this video a like in honor of our good friend Jeff Sentell. And make sure to join us in the next few weeks for Mike Griffith and Connor Riley. Dawg Nation, thank you so much, and we will see you at the next DawgNation Tell All.